Shalom Lekulam. Today on Hebrew Book Review, I'm going to talk about a children's book series called Shalom Ivrit. Welcome back to Hebrew Book Review. Today I am reviewing Shalom Ivrit, which is a 3-book series written by Nili Ziv, with illustrations by Nicole Denbosch, John Holm, Susan Simon, and Andrew Condren. I purchased this book at Behrman House, a publisher that specializes in Jewish educational materials. This series is intended for children, so an adult teacher is a big help. But that teacher does not need to know much more than the Aleph Bet, and they can learn along with their child. The font is a typical Times Roman font, slightly bigger than your 12 point, and there is no cursive, and there is a mix of Ktiv Maleh and Ktiv Chaser. The first 2 books have about 80% religious content, and the third book is a lot less, but still probably enough to make secular families a little uncomfortable. If starting with the first book, the students do need to already know all of their letters and nikud, as well as to be able to sound out words. With this series, children will learn about 250 vocabulary words per book. The first book teaches the Jewish holidays and the absolute basics of simple Hebrew sentences, including the present tense of Pa'al verbs. The second book teaches Jewish values and traditional stories, and it teaches a little bit more basic grammar. The third book teaches more basic grammar, including the past tense of Pa'al verbs, and the students start reading short passages and demonstrating reading comprehension. So here at this point, I wanted to give you a glimpse into each of the books. So here we start with the first book, and you can see that she is already expecting the students to know how to read and write. She doesn't teach anything about the letters, the nikud, or how to write anything. So that is expected to be known already. And so we kind of follow this family, and there's a family that includes a mouse and an ant. And all of the chapters start with a short text and, a couple of vocabulary words. And of course, because it's geared towards children, there's no explanation of grammar. I mean, if there is, it's a very short explanation, and it does not include any complicated words, right? They might just say singular, it looks like this, and plural, it gets the im ending, right? So they don't get too descriptive. And then they always have some fun exercises that just kind of remind the students of what they've learned. And so they're all pretty short and easy to do, and they build one on top of the other, right? Just to reinforce vocabulary, and then a couple of writing exercises. And this first chapter just introduces the family, but then the rest of the chapters are going to go through the holidays, the Jewish holidays throughout the year. And by the time we get to chapter 14, which is the last chapter in the first book, you can see how much they have learned and how much they can read. And it's quite a bit of text that they are able to read. And now my son did not this looks a little bit intimidating, but my son did not feel intimidated when he read this. He knew that he already knew all of the words, and he had this, because it's the final chapter, it's kind of an overview chapter of all of everything that they've learned about the holidays. So these first 2 pages are kind of like a poem about all of the Jewish holidays throughout the year. And then, of course, just more exercises to reinforce everything that they've learned. Here we can see that there's an exercise about which verb forms to use. So are they going to use the boy form, the girl form, or the plural form? Right? And you can see it says he, she, or they, right? It's not saying masculine, feminine, and plural and using all kinds of grammatical terms, right? They make it easy for kids to understand. And then here's a second text. Each chapter has 2 texts. Sometimes the second text is like a continuation of the first one. And then some writing practice and vocabulary practice. And in this one, they're finishing the sentence with, you can see they've got 2 sentences and then 2 ways to finish each one, and they need to finish them appropriately, right? So you can see number 2, he got wrong. It says besukot yoshvim blank, and that means on Sukkot we sit. And your 2 options over here in the green square are in the sukkah or lulav and etrog, which, if you're not familiar, lulav and etrog are 2 of the items that we shake around the sukkah during Sukkot. So you can see he got this one wrong because he said on Sukkot we sit lulav and etrog, and obviously that's not right. He should have said we sit in the sukkah. And at the end they have a big vocabulary list of all of the words that they've learned throughout the book. So in this second book, each chapter starts with a story adapted from some Jewish legend, and that story illustrates a Jewish value. And chapter 4 of book 2 says, you can see over here on the left, Sameach bechelko, which means happy with one's lot. And so the whole chapter is going to be a story about being happy with one's lot. And this particular story I've also heard elsewhere. So this is a Jewish folktale that is about a Jewish family that's a really big family and lives in a really small house. And they go, I guess, to the rabbi and tell him, my house is too small. And so the rabbi says, oh, go, so bring the goat into the house and bring the cow into the house and bring the horse into the house, and he keeps telling him to put more and more animals in the house. And they're thinking, how is this, you know, helping our situation? And then at the end of it, he tells them, okay, take all of the animals out of the house. And of course, at that point, with all of the animals out of the house, they feel like the house is so big, right? And so this is teaching us to be happy with our lot. We should be happy that we have a home. And also, they get all kinds of vocabulary about ordinal numbers, right? The first day, the second day, the third day, and also a vocabulary about animals. So then they have some activities that help them remember the animals, and activities about matching the sentences, the Hebrew sentence to the English sentence. And then we can see we get more of the story. So we basically got half of the story during the first text, and then now we've got the second half of the story. So, and then here they're even asking questions specifically to the student about their own family life. And so this is kind of reinforcing the form yesh lecha or yesh lach, which means do you have? And they're asking all of the questions. Do you have this in your house? Do you have a television? Do you have a cat? Do you have all of these various things? And the student is supposed to answer yes or no. And they say yeshli if they have it and ainli if they don't have it. That's how all of these chapters go. They start with a story and then they get a couple of exercises and then a different story or more to the same story and then more and more exercises. And the exercises are really well organized. They get more and more more and more advanced as they go along, right? You start with just matching and then you end you end with writing stuff and even writing about your own life. Okay, and then the third book really goes off on a totally different has a totally different feel to it. And it's basically you the first two pages introduce what is it? 8 characters who are all at summer camp together. And then we learn about them and what they do at summer camp all throughout the book. And this book focuses again a lot on verbs, and it also the students learn the past tense. So this is chapter 12, and so you can see it says Orchim LePesach, which means guests for Passover. Look at all of this that they can read. This is a pretty long passage covering 4 pages, and they're able to read quite a bit. Okay, and so then they have again more exercises about reading comprehension. And then here is a vocabulary exercise where they've got the vocabulary word in English over on the left, and it's somewhere in that sentence, and so they have to circle the right one. And then here on this page at the top, they remind the students what the present tense looks like and what the past tense looks like, and then they have to identify in the middle there, they have to identify whether the verbs are present tense or past tense. And then at the bottom, they have to choose the correct verb. They're filling in the blank in the sentence with the correct form of the verb, and it's one of the 3 that are over on the left side. By the end of this series, students will be familiar with noun gender, pronouns, copula sentences, face parts, a few prepositions, possession using yesh, colors, and days of the week. My son was 8 to 9 years old when we went through these books, and he always looked forward to them. He really liked the characters and the great illustrations. I really appreciated that it taught regular modern Hebrew and not prayers and biblical Hebrew. This was the first series that I found for kids that taught modern Hebrew. It's also great that when they model student writing, for example, if they're providing an example of what the student is supposed to do, they use block letters. So that is really helpful if the students have not learned cursive yet. The biggest negative of this series is for secular families. Judaism is everywhere. And so if you are a family that really wants secular materials, this series is not for you. Also, kids are expected to answer the questions in the book, and sometimes they're not provided enough space. Kids sometimes write really big and they give the amount of space that an adult would need. And lastly, I got the sense that some of the passages might be songs, but I didn't know them. I wasn't familiar with them, and I couldn't find them on YouTube. They might have just been poems, but it would have been nice if they had given a little more context as to if this is a poem from somewhere or if it is a song. It would be great to be able to sing it. But otherwise, I really loved it. I thought it did a great job of introducing my son to the actual ins and outs of modern Hebrew. It taught it the same way that he was learning English in his English classes. And so I really, really enjoyed this series, and so did my son. So, Shalom Ivrit, a great series for kids to introduce them to modern Hebrew grammar and Jewish culture. So if you have any questions or feedback, please leave it in the comments and I will do my best to respond. And also, if you have some book that you'd like me to review, also leave that in the comments and I'll try to get to it. Hit like if you enjoyed this video and subscribe and press the notification bell if you want to see more. So on Sunday, I'm going to have another vocabulary video, and on Tuesday will be a grammar video. So I hope you'll check those out. Or you can just wait for next Thursday, which will be another big book review, and I will be reviewing Ani Koreh. It's a series of books for kids. Lehitraot, papa'am haba'ah. See you next time.